Salutations, future Twig. Past Twig here once again, and we're back with another miniature machination for everybody. Today we're going to be looking at the collector crab, because this is a miniature that I did not have a narrative for going into the building of the miniature. It kind of just spawned from some random components I had lying around, and as such, don't really have so much of a narrative or backstory for this one. Just want to make something cool, so let's get right on into it. First off, of course, we're going to be talking about the inspirations I had when building this miniature. I love the Battletech universe in particular, and I love the king crab heavy assault mech from there. Just there's something really cool about the way his little guns kind of have little claw pincers like a crab that just really speaks to me. I also really enjoy these scarabs and such from like Halo. I really enjoy the just kind of arthropoidal segmented style mechanized units, and I kind of wanted to have one of my own of those for my miniature shelf, so I went out of my way to go and build one. Lastly, I actually had two components that I found on the side of the road. I found a topper of like a flagpole and a reflector off a bike that was missing like the little red component that you can see here in the picture. And I was like, you know, these two kind of go together and form a nice little body that I could definitely see working out into an actual crab body. So that's exactly what I decided to do. And I started by sticking them together. And then I also grabbed a couple of those really thin little bottle caps, flipped them upside down and stuck them on the very top of the broken reflector. And as you see, I kind of have this basic body shape assembled with that. Moving on, I built out that basic body by adding on some more components. I had just some other spare bits of like pins, as well as a little bit of wiring lying around as well, that I used to kind of start fleshing out the top. And I also had some paper clips I used to build little armatures for the legs. As you can see here, down here and below in the second and third picture, one of those legs ended up actually snapping off, and instead of gluing it back on, because I had tried that once and it wasn't working, I actually used that for a different bit of inspiration. So this crab will actually have a broken leg, as you'll see in the future pictures. Moving on, I then grabbed my hot glue gun and got to work building the arms as well as fleshing out the legs to add on a bit more beef. Moving on to the bottom, as you can see, I also covered over that really smooth, mechanical-looking round bit with a bunch of hot glue to kind of give it this nice organic, creature-looking vibe, because I wanted this crab to be kind of like half organic and half mechanical. And then I also used a bead on a little eye stalk to create an eye for the crab. Lastly, as you can see on the very front there, I also used bits off an old super glue bottle that I cut up, and I used the ridged sides of that super glue bottle to kind of make these little ridged front panels to look like this somebody had stapled some metal panels in front of this crab for armor. And with all that being said, I'm actually going to turn over the IRL Twig here to show you the future steps as well as the painting of this project. And thank you all very much. Let's take it over the IRL Twig. And thank you so much for the introduction, PowerPoint Twig. This is IRL Twig. Hello, hi everyone. And I thought I would give you guys an update here, work in progress post about the crab mini we have here. As you guys can see, as I get it up close to the camera here, he has been fully Mod Podged. And what I mean by that is I basically took some Mod Podge. This is a basic craft supplement you can find in most stores. And I have coated the entire miniature in this. What I love about Mod Podge is that it basically acts as both a sealer and a glue. So it'll basically bond to anything and give us a nice uniform surface that's waterproof so that we can put our acrylic paints over it without causing issue or damage to the underlying drywall texture and other stuff that we actually use to build out, especially the organic components like these claws here. Obviously though, Mod Podge dries clear, so what we actually did was I took some black and white acrylic craft paint, and I basically made up a custom batch called Mod My Podge, which is just this nice gray batch here, and so that gives it a nice uniform coating. I'm actually going to be running an experiment here with this boy, because I've never actually done this before. I usually prime my miniatures before painting them, but I've heard that you can actually paint on Mod Podge directly, and as long as you seal it up properly afterwards, the paint will be locked in place and will not move. If that's the case, that'd be awesome, because that means that with this colored Mod Podge base coat I'm doing, I can basically take three separate steps I've been doing, which is Mod Podging the miniature, priming the miniature, and then base coating it with the color I want, and making that a one-step process instead, by just doing it all in one step. And so we're going to be testing it out. Hopefully I can cut off a lot of time there and get right to painting. But as you guys can see, he came out very well. I love doing the Mod Podge like final coating, or basically the base coating here, because it basically takes all these disparate pieces that all have different colors and textures and shapes and makes them the same color, and that just gives this uniformed appearance to the piece where it looks like now it's a single miniature and not just a bunch of parts that have been randomly stapled or glued together. And I'm very happy with how he came out. Here's his little cute eye stalk up here at the front. We obviously have the claws. We've got his little legs here, as you can see, with that texture that really pops very well with the nice base coat we did for it. And moving underneath, you have the ball that has now been covered with hot glue as well as a little texture. Just looks nice and organic and contrasts nicely with the kind of smooth sleekness of the mechanical parts up above. We even have a couple of wires out the back, and I originally was going to just leave these black, but I think I might paint these an actual energy color to kind of help pop this part of the miniature. But we'll see how that actually goes when we get to painting. Moving on, I actually wanted to show you off this. This took a while. This is actually about 3 hours of work here of a hot glue gun, and what I basically did was I took a, let's see, it looks like it's a Lay's Stacks lid, so basically a chip can lid, and I basically filled it with a bunch of those fine finishing nails. I'll put up a picture in post to show you guys what I'm talking about. I put a very thin layer of those down along with some super glue to help give this both some rigidity, because this thin plastic tends to be quite warpy. And so I give it some rigidity as well as some weight. So it actually, as you see, falls down very nicely and is a nice solid base for our miniature. Moving on, of course, I actually used some clear plastic packaging, kind of like what you'd find for like a carton of strawberries, and I basically cut out little wavy bits out of that, and I glued those together to basically form these little splashes here. So this is actually going to be a water base, and this was a technique. I'm blanking on the YouTube channel name. I'll have the picture up right now on screen. I'll also have the link in the description below, but basically it's a YouTube channel where it's designed to have this water splash effect so that when you have your miniature on top, it looks like he's in the water, he's treading, and he has a lot of weight, so he's releasing these massive up splashes of water, and just kind of showing that all off. It's a very cool kind of dynamic base, and I'm very cool to see how this looks when it's actually painted properly and not just in gray Mod Podge, though I will say the effect already looks pretty good for gray Mod Podge and for my first ever attempt at this effect, which is very good because this was about, as I said, 3 hours of hot gluing and like 3 miniature glue sticks, or 4 of them, that went into this. So yeah, I'm glad I got with all that work, I actually got some decent effect out of it. And that is actually all I have for this progress post. Thank you so much, and back to you, PowerPoint Twig. Bye! And hello again, everyone. This is IRL Twig back at it again, and this time I've got the crab miniature once more, but this time, dun 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 dun, it is actually done, and it is painted, and I've even got the base assembled. So I figured we'd kind of walk through this here and kind of wrap up this project here today. First off, I'm actually going to talk about the base itself as opposed to the crab. As you can see, this is like a, let's see, Lay's Stacks chip container. I basically used the Mod Podge trick of having the Mod Podge mixed with gray paint, effectively, by mixing white and black, to kind of both help seal this and give it just a little bit of color, so it kind of dulls down the obnoxious yellow that this was originally. As you can tell, the rim here, very clearly with this lighting, is actually a black. I have painted over almost everything with matte Mod Podge except for the water effect here. The water effect has been actually painted with gloss Mod Podge. And as you can see, it actually came together quite well. What this was, and I'll leave the link to the video down below, is actually a trick I learned from a different YouTuber whose name I'm blanking on, where he uses hot glue along with little bits of clear plastic packaging, like the type you would find on top of strawberry cart containers. And what you do there is you basically cut out little bits of the plastic packaging, put it into the shape of the water splashes you want, then cover over everything with hot glue to help seal it and kind of keep its shape. And once you've done that, you then paint over everything. And of course, what I did was I used a basic blue, went over with a dark blue wash, did some highlights in the same blue once again, and then used some white for the high washes of the actual froth. And it came together quite well and gives this crab, as you can see here, sorry, having to do this through a camera, but as you can see here very roughly, makes it look like this crab is striding through and its heavy footfalls are causing the water to splash around it. And I think that's a very cool effect, and it was very cheap. The only thing that really cost me was hot glue, and I only used about 3 or 4 hot glue sticks on this particular effect, and I think it came together marvelously, especially considering the fact I have never ever done that before. So, that is the base itself. And now moving on to the main event, we actually have our crab boy. So as you can see, here he is, painted up in all of his glory. I will say one thing that I was very happy about is I've never used washes very much on any miniature except for the Pillar of Autumn, which I showed off last time. And even then, that was like a pre-built wash. These were actually custom washes I built myself using dish soap, water, and paint. And they came out fairly well. I will say they weren't quite able to color modulate to fix over the fact that I used a purple on the undertone of the crab and a pink on the top, so it was a little bit hard to do that. But I think it did a very good job of still blending everything together by adding a reddish pink color to the recesses up here and helping kind of add some pinkish highlights down here. As we can see going on, I actually used the process is complete. I really am happy with how this texturing came out. There were 1 or 2 cracks that occurred because of the joint compound itself kind of cracking a little bit because it's not designed to be used in this way, but I love the texturing that it gave where it has this kind of warped, kind of like grody flesh, kind of like carapace looking structure to it. I'm very happy with how that came out. I've also got the eyeball here. As you can see, this was also done with gloss Mod Podge. Just to add a bit of extra shine, and I used some green to help tie its accents into the power coils on the back. Moving on, of course, you can see I used a gunmetal gray with a black wash. I'm very happy with how this black wash came out. And basically to help do all the silver highlights and stuff up here. We got some flesh poking through up here because this crab has had like armor and other stuff added on to the top of it. And on top we actually have coral, and the other stuff that the crab tends to pick up as it wanders around the broken I am assuming like industrialized side of the sea, picking up old bits of material and metals that have fallen into the sea or something. Not quite sure of the full story of this crab. I just think he's cool. As we can see here, I actually used some old hot glue strands that tend to occur whenever you're hot gluing a lot of stuff, and I coated those in a little bit of paint so it adds some kind of cabling. And over here we've got some rusted out bits of metal, and this actually back here, this little triangular piece was originally going to be one of the legs. As you can see, he's actually missing a leg back here, and it snapped off here, and I was like, I could reattach it, do a whole lot of effort to get that back on top of it, but I actually kind of like the story that this crab is just missing a leg for some reason and has never actually regrown it. So there we go there. We've got his kind of his other eye, his like optical laser bit here coming forward. Got some wiring, of course, as you go back there. I've painted all of these coils, as you can see, a nice bright green with a little bit of white to kind of show the high points where it would be especially powerful. And you can see that even goes up into the actual like little power generator coming on here at the back. Aside from that, most of that covers most of the colors here. I'm actually very happy of how the underside of this crab came out. As you can tell, I used a lot of hot glue down here to hide that like rounded bit I used off of like a flag or whatever it was for his undercarriage, and all in all, I am very pleased with how everything came together. The colors came together nicely, the effects came together nicely. I can tell you right now, I've been rubbing all over this with my fingers, and contrary to popular belief, it appears that when you use Mod Podge as your base coat, and then you Mod Podge over the top, the paint underneath is stuck between two layers of thick plastic sealer, and as such, this miniature feels very durable, and it does not feel like I'm going to rub off paint onto my skin, as we can see here. So overall, I would say that at least initially, I'm going to have to wait some months to see if this holds up. The Mod Podge without primer appears to work very successfully, and I'm very happy about that. And I gotta say, I'm also very pleased, as I've already mentioned, with this hot glue experiment with the water effects. Try and get them back on here through this camera. There we go. And I'm very pleased with how that turned out as well. So I'm very pleased with this whole water effect, and I hope they'll use that in the future. Additionally, I gotta say, while the washes are a bit amateurish, I'm very happy with how they came out. I feel especially the wash for the base really helped brought the base detail together, and the wash for the skin even helped kind of bring some elements together that I wasn't expecting. So several little experiments where I haven't done these before turned out very nicely for this project, and overall I'm quite happy. This guy, I think I started him, I was actually thinking of it yesterday, I think it was like 8 or 10 months ago is when I first glued together this little bicycle reflector piece to the little ball underneath and had the idea for a crab. But it's been 8 months since then, and it's so nice to finally have this project with the check mark. It is done. He is complete. He is going on my shelf alongside my other miniatures, and I'm very happy with how he turned out. And I'm looking forward to seeing what I build on next. I already have some ideas for my next project, so who knows? We might see a video on that here in a couple of weeks. But either way, that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day all. Cheers!